Frederick Douglass Forever Free. Frederick Douglass Forever Free. Focus question. Why is Frederick Douglass an important civil rights leader in U.S. history? Bread for lessons. 8-year-old Frederick Douglass took a loaf of bread from the kitchen and slipped out the back door to run errands. Frederick was enslaved, but he knew he had more to eat than some boys in his neighborhood. So he traded them bread for something he wanted even more, to learn how to write. Just the day before, his enslaver's wife, Sophia Auld, had snatched a newspaper away from him as he tried to read it in secret. All Frederick wanted was an education, but for enslaved people in the 1820s, that was against the law. The white boy Frederick knew might be poor, but they had been allowed to go to school. He'd tease them, saying, "I bet I know more of the alphabet than you do." Then he'd write a few letters in the dirt. The other boys would write that they knew. What they knew, and Frederick would learn to write those new letters. Now he was trading food for proper lessons in reading and writing. Up ahead, Frederick saw one of his friends waiting to give him a lesson and hurried to join him. Frederick would give up his lunch every day to learn. Born into slavery. Frederick was born in February of 1817 or 1990. He never knew the date of his birth, and though he knew his father was white, he never knew who he was. His mother was Harriet Bailey, but Frederick was raised by his grandmother, Bessie Bailey. When he was 8 years old, Frederick was sent to work for some of his enslaved relatives, the Auld family in Baltimore, Maryland. When Frederick first arrived, Sophia Auld helped teach him the alphabet. She gave him several lessons before her husband stopped her. Education in slavery was incompatible, he said. An enslaved person who learned to read would grow dissatisfied with their condition and desire freedom. Auld's word proved to be true. The more Frederick read, the better he understood his situation, the more he hated slavery, and the unhappier he was. For some time, Frederick struggled to understand the word abolition. Whenever an enslaved person ran away or did something an enslaver said was bad, abolition was blamed. Frederick tried looking up the word in the dictionary, but it merely said the act of abolishing. What was being abolished? In 1831, Frederick read a newspaper article about the abolition movement and the people who were fighting to end slavery. Now he understood. Some white people wanted to abolish slavery too. He would learn that black people were free in some states, and he began dreaming of escape. Once he learned to read, Douglass wrote later in life, "You will be forever free." Understanding that education and freedom went hand in hand, he began giving lessons to other enslaved people until enslavers stopped his Sunday school. He earned a reputation among enslaved people as a leader, and among enslavers was a troublemaker. Escape. For years, Frederick had lived in the city. At 15, he was sent to work on a farm as a field hand for Edward Covey, a man known to beat enslaved people into obedience. Loaning Frederick to Covey may have been Auld's way of punishing him for trying to educate himself and others. Covey almost succeeded in breaking Frederick's spirit. After enduring 6 months of abuse, though, 16-year-old Frederick had enough. The next time Covey tried to beat him, he fought back for 2 hours. Covey never tried to beat him again. After this, Frederick began to plan his escape. He tried once but was caught. Still, Frederick continued to dream of freedom and work on his literacy. He even joined the East Baltimore Mental Improvement Society, a debate club. It was there that Frederick met Anna Mary, a free black woman. Together, Anna and Frederick planned his escape. He sent him her savings so that he could buy a train ticket and sewed him a sailor's uniform. Dressed in these and carrying a freedman's passport, Frederick traveled through Delaware and Pennsylvania to New York. The escape took a little less than 24 hours, but as Frederick later wrote, I lived more in one day than in a year of my slave life. Speaking to audiences years later, Frederick would say, I appear before you this evening as a thief and a robber. I stole his head, these limbs, this body from my master and ran off with them. Escaping didn't mean that Frederick was truly free. Enslaved people who made it to a free state could live as if they were free, but they could still be seized and taken back to a slave state. Frederick sent to Anna to join him, and they were married in 1838. Since Frederick was a fugitive who could be caught and forced back into slavery, the newlyweds changed their name to Douglas. They settled in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and had 5 children together, happy along the way. Abolitionists organized a secret network to help escapees in the 1800s. This network came to be called the Underground Railroad. Places with food, clothing, and settlers were called safe houses or stations. Because many fugitive sailors on foot, people helping them, known as conductors or station masters, tried to provide a station every 15 miles, 24 kilometers. Frederick Douglass stayed in safe houses when he first escaped. He himself later became a station master in Rochester, New York. He and Anna helped fugitives escape to Canada. Writing and speaking. Douglass began to speak at anti-slavery meetings and soon became the voice of the abolition movement. Enslavers argued that enslaved people lacked the intellect to function as free American citizens. Each time Douglass spoke, his eloquence countered that. Yet he was so eloquent that some white people refused to believe he had ever been enslaved. Douglass wrote 3 autobiographies in his lifetime. The first, published in 1845, was Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. Critics said that the book, like Douglass himself, was fake. No enslaved person was smart enough to write so well, they argued. Yet the book was an instant success and persuaded many people that an enslaved person could possess a great mind. At the same time, the book included details that could have led to Douglas's arrest as a fugitive. In order to avoid recapture, he left the country on a 2-year speaking tour. An electrifying speaker, Douglass was a star in England. Fans there raised some money for his freedom, a purchase called manumission. When Douglass returned to the United States in 1848, he founded a newspaper. He also wrote thousands of speeches and editorials calling for an end to slavery. I expose slavery in this country, wrote Douglass, because to expose it is to kill it. Slavery is one of those monsters of darkness to whom the light of truth is death. One of his most famous speeches was What to the Slave is the 4th of July, when he delivered a speech on July 5th, 1852. Douglass surprised his audience by posing questions about what Independence Day meant for enslaved people and those once enslaved. What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? Land of the Free. By the Civil War, Douglass was the most famous black man in the United States. In 1863, he served as President Lincoln's advisor on the Emancipation Proclamation, an order that freed the majority of enslaved people. He repeatedly argued Lincoln to make emancipation a stated goal of the war. Some historians think Douglas helped inspire the famous Gettysburg Address. Douglas also convinced Lincoln to allow black soldiers to fight for the North. When they did, two of his sons were among them, Douglas and President Lincoln. Lincoln and Douglas didn't always see eye to eye. After Lincoln died, though, Douglas gave the keynote address at a memorial honoring Lincoln. The crowd gave Douglas a standing ovation, and the president's widow, Mary Todd Lincoln, gave him Lincoln's favorite walking stick in appreciation. The walking stick still rests in Douglas's house. Douglas's writing and speaking helped end slavery with the 13th Amendment, passed after the Civil War ended in 1865. 3 years later, the 14th Amendment granted citizenship to former enslaved people. Shortly after that, in 1870, the 15th Amendment gave every male citizen, including black man, the right to vote. Douglas and women's rights. Douglas didn't live to see universal suffrage, the right of every adult to vote, but he fought for it until he died. In 1920, the states ratified the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote. Douglas wanted the United States to reach its potential as a land of the free, for black people, women, Native Americans, and immigrants too. I would unite with anybody to do right and with nobody to do wrong, Douglas said. He continued to fight for equality for the rest of his life. Douglas died in February 20, 1895. Today, Douglas is often called the father of the civil rights movement. He changed the way Americans thought about slavery and race. He left behind words to continue to inspire Americans, including its motto, right is of no sex, truth is of no color.